The royal legacy and the unexpected encounter. Zara stood in the grand hall of the palace, gazing out over the vast city below. Her world was vast, filled with thousands of planets and millions of people. As the future queen of this vast empire, she had been trained since birth for one purpose: to rule. Every lesson, every decision, every action she had taken was part of preparing her for the heavy crown she would soon wear. The weight of her destiny was something she had carried all her life. Her father, the king, had always said that strength was the key to leadership. The strongest would rule the galaxy. He taught her that power came from control, from the ability to dominate and command. From a young age, Zara had learned to read strategy, manage armies, and use her influence to bend others to her will. She had never questioned it. After all, it was the way of their people. They were the most powerful race in the galaxy, and Zara would be the most powerful of them all. But something in the pit of her stomach told her that this might not be all there was to ruling. As her coronation day drew nearer, the weight of her future began to feel heavier. What if there was more to power than what she had been taught? What if there was another way? Just as Zara's thoughts drifted, a servant approached her with news. "Your Highness, there is a visitor. A human from the outer colonies, a refugee. He insists on seeing you." Zara raised an eyebrow. A human? She was curious. Humans were far from her thoughts. They were not part of the royal court, and their status was not one of power. Yet this human dared to ask for her presence. "Bring him in," she commanded, her voice steady, though inside she felt a strange stir of curiosity. Moments later, the doors to the grand hall opened. In walked a man, but not one like the royal subjects who normally visited. He was different, rough around the edges, his clothes tattered from the long journey, his eyes weary. But there was something else about him that Zara couldn't quite place. There was a calmness about him, an unshakable confidence that radiated from him despite his appearance. How could someone like him stand before her without trembling? He bowed, though it was not the grand bow of someone who had been taught court manners. It was simple, genuine. "Your Highness," he said with a low voice that carried across the room, "I am Jason, a refugee from the outer colonies. I've come to speak with you, though I am no one of importance. I only ask for a moment of your time." Zara studied him carefully. A human. He didn't look like much, but there was something in his eyes that intrigued her. Humans were known for their resilience, their ability to survive in harsh conditions. But was that enough to earn her attention? What made him think he could demand her time? "Speak then," Zara said, her voice laced with authority. "Why should I listen to a refugee?" Jason looked up at her with a steady gaze, his voice calm. "Because, Your Highness, I know something about power that you may not understand. Something that is not taught in the royal courts. I have lived through hardships, and I have seen what true strength is." Zara felt a strange tug in her chest. Who was this man to lecture her on strength? She had been raised to believe that her bloodline was the greatest power in the galaxy. She was the one who was destined to rule, to command. How could this human, this refugee, possibly know more than she did? But there was something in his words that made her pause. True strength? What did he mean by that? "You think you know power?" Zara asked, her tone more challenging than she intended. "You, a human who has lived in the outer colonies? How can someone like you understand the responsibility of ruling an empire?" Jason didn't flinch. His expression remained calm, unbroken. "I understand responsibility better than most. I've had to survive without a throne, without an army, without wealth. I know that true power is not in what you have, but in what you can give. Power comes from protecting those who are vulnerable, not from ruling over them." Zara's eyes narrowed. His words were unexpected. What did he mean by protecting? Her entire life had been about ruling, about bending the galaxy to her will. But what he said, it struck a chord. Was it possible that this human understood something about power that she didn't? "I was taught that to rule is to be feared," Zara said slowly. "Fear is the key to control." Jason shook his head slightly, a hint of sadness in his eyes. Fear only creates slaves. True power comes from respect, from understanding. You don't need to be feared, princess. You need to be someone they trust, someone who stands with them, not above them. Zara stood still, his words echoing in her mind. She had never considered that idea. How could a human, someone so far removed from the luxury and privilege of her world, teach her about power? Yet, there was something about him, something undeniable, that made her want to learn more. "Thank you, Jason," she said softly. "You may go." But as he turned to leave, Zara felt a strange feeling she couldn't place. This meeting had shifted something within her. It wasn't just curiosity anymore. She wanted to understand. She wanted to know what he knew about power, and for the first time in her life, she wondered if the future she had been prepared for was really the one she wanted. As Jason walked out of the hall, Zara couldn't help but wonder if the true power he spoke of was something she could learn to wield. The path ahead was uncertain. But she knew one thing for sure. This human refugee had just begun to change the course of her destiny. The clash of worlds and the hidden truth. Zara could not stop thinking about Jason. Since their meeting, his words had echoed in her mind, louder and louder with each passing moment. She had spent her entire life learning the art of power. Yet, this human, a refugee with no title or status, had questioned everything she had been taught. She thought of herself as the future queen of 1,000 worlds. But now, for the first time, she wondered if there was something more to leadership than what she had learned in the royal halls. The days after their encounter were filled with strange thoughts. She couldn't ignore the nagging feeling that Jason had unlocked something inside her, something that had been buried deep. Her world was one of grandeur, where rulers were to be feared and obeyed. But now this human, this outsider, had shown her a glimpse of a power she never knew existed. The power of respect, understanding, and trust. But Zara was not about to admit that so easily. Her pride as the princess of the galaxy refused to let her bow to these new ideas so quickly. She had to prove something. She had to show that she was the ruler she was destined to be. She couldn't let a human refugee, no matter how wise, question her royal heritage. So, she summoned him. "Bring Jason to me," she ordered her guards, her voice firm. When Jason arrived in the royal chambers, Zara didn't wait for pleasantries. She had made up her mind. She needed answers, and she would get them no matter the cost. "You've been here long enough, human," she began, her tone cold. "It's time to show me what you truly know. I am the future queen, and I have spent my entire life preparing for that role. I was taught to rule with strength, to be feared and respected. I want to know how you, a mere refugee, can possibly have anything to offer me." Jason, as always, stood calmly before her. He didn't seem rattled by her harsh words or the grand palace surrounding them. His gaze never wavered, and it both irritated and fascinated Zara. How could he remain so composed? How could he look at her with such certainty? "You want to know what I know about power?" he asked, his voice calm but steady. "You don't rule with fear, princess. You rule with empathy. True power is not about making people obey you. It's about understanding them, standing with them when they need it most. When you make a people fear you, you only build walls between you and them. But when you show them respect, when you show them that you care for their well-being, that's when you truly become their leader." Zara's heart skipped a beat. His words were not what she expected. She had always believed that leadership was about control, about maintaining an iron grip over everything. But what Jason said, it felt different. It made her question the very core of everything she had ever been taught. "You think it's that simple?" she replied, trying to hold on to her pride. "You think I can just throw away everything I've been trained for, everything my father and the royal council have told me? This galaxy is not some peaceful paradise. It is full of conflict, war, and fear. I cannot just be soft and expect people to follow me." "No," Jason said softly, his eyes filled with understanding. "You're right. The galaxy isn't peaceful, but that's exactly why you need to change how you lead. Fear makes people weaker. It makes them desperate. And desperate people are dangerous. When you lead with strength, yes, You will have power, but it will always be fragile. If you want true loyalty, true power, you need to give them something they can believe in. You need to show them that you are willing to fight for them. There was a long silence between them. Zara's mind was racing, trying to understand the truth behind Jason's words. She had never heard anyone speak to her like this before, and it unsettled her. She had always believed in the strict, unforgiving rules of royalty, but what Jason was saying, it felt like the truth. Just then, the doors to the royal chamber slammed open. One of Zara's most trusted advisors, a high-ranking general, stormed in. His eyes were wide with shock and his face was flushed with anger, Your Highness. The general exclaimed, bowing hurriedly but still looking furious. We have just received troubling news from the outer colonies. A rebellion has begun. They are calling for a new kind of leadership, one that does not come from fear, but from understanding. They've begun to rally under a new banner, and they speak of a leader who knows their struggles and who is willing to listen. They say that this leader is none other than a human. Zara's heart skipped a beat. Could it be? Was Jason somehow involved in this rebellion? How could he, just one human, have sparked such a movement? What is this nonsense? Zara demanded, though she felt a sinking feeling in her stomach. There is no way a human could lead such a rebellion. The general looked at her, a grim expression on his face. It is said that this human has been teaching the rebels that true power comes from empathy and understanding, not domination. They believe that a new way is possible, a way that doesn't rely on fear. If they succeed, it could change everything. Zara stood frozen. The rebellion was growing, and it was led by the very thing she had once dismissed, human ideals. The same ideals that Jason had spoken to her about. Could he be the one leading this movement? Did he have the power to change the galaxy after all? The tension in the room was palpable. Zara turned slowly to Jason, her thoughts racing. Could she afford to ignore what he had said? Could she continue with the old ways of ruling? Or had she just discovered something far greater than she could have imagined? The future of the galaxy seemed uncertain now, and Zara realized that her destiny might be more complicated than she had ever believed. The path she had once thought was hers alone to take was now in jeopardy, and the person who had shown her a different way was a human refugee, someone who had nothing but his words to offer. But could those words be enough to change the galaxy? Zara wasn't sure, but she knew one thing. This was only the beginning of something far bigger than she could have imagined. The human refugee's lesson Zara spent the following days in turmoil. The words Jason had spoken to her lingered in her mind, growing louder, harder to ignore. Every time she tried to focus on the lessons her father had taught her, about dominance, about ruling with an iron fist, she was distracted by the image of that calm, confident human, standing before her in the royal chamber. She had dismissed his ideas at first, but now, as the galaxy around her seemed to stir with whispers of rebellion, she couldn't shake the feeling that he might be right. It wasn't just about power anymore. It was about understanding. It was about something deeper, something more meaningful. But could she truly let go of everything she had known? Could she trust the teachings of someone like Jason, a refugee with nothing to his name except the strength of his ideas? One night, unable to sleep, Zara called for him. She had made up her mind. If she was going to understand what he meant by true power, she would have to see it for herself. She had to get away from the palace, away from the walls of the royal court. Maybe then, she could see the world through his eyes. Jason, she called out to him the next morning, her voice steady but with an underlying curiosity. Come with me. We're leaving the palace. His eyes widened in surprise. Leave the palace? He asked, as though he didn't understand. But Your Highness, this is your home, your people. My people? She interrupted, her voice sharp. They are not mine to control. Not like this. She exhaled deeply, as if releasing the weight of her royal heritage all at once. I need to understand. Show me your world, Jason. Show me what you meant when you said true power comes from understanding. There was a moment of silence. Jason seemed to hesitate, but only for a moment. Then, with a simple nod, he agreed. Very well, Princess, but you must understand. This will be no easy journey. You will see things that will challenge everything you know. You will witness the suffering, the hardship, the real struggles of those you were never taught to care about. Are you ready for that? Zara didn't answer immediately. She had spent her life in luxury, in a world where power was not earned, but inherited. She had never seen the struggle of those beneath her, the ones who lived in poverty and fear. But now something stirred inside her, a burning desire to understand, to change. Take me there, she said, her voice softer than before. They left the palace under the cover of night, traveling in a cloaked ship designed for stealth. The stars outside were endless, a sea of lights that stretched across the vastness of the galaxy. As the ship moved through space, Zara felt a strange unease settle in her chest. She had been trained for battle, for diplomacy, for commanding fleets, but she had never been trained for this. This journey wasn't about war. It was about something more subtle, something far more difficult to grasp. Hours passed, and the ship eventually descended into a low, dusty colony on the outskirts of the galaxy. The buildings here were not grand palaces or shining cities. They were dilapidated, built from scraps and old technology. There were no royal guards, no servants, just ordinary people struggling to survive. This is where I grew up, Jason said, his voice low. This is the real world, where people don't have the luxury of living in comfort, where survival is the only thing that matters. Zara stepped off the ship and onto the dusty ground. The air was thick, carrying the smell of sweat and burnt metal. She could see families gathered around small fires, children playing in the dirt. But there was something else, something in their eyes. Despite the hardship, despite the poverty, they seemed alive. They had a strength in them that she couldn't quite place. How do they survive like this? Zara asked, her voice filled with both confusion and awe. Jason turned to her, his face soft with understanding. They survive because they have to, but they also survive because they look out for each other. They help each other. True power comes from what you can give, not what you can take. The strong here don't use their power to control others. They use it to lift each other up. They walked deeper into the colony, and Zara began to notice more. How the people seemed to share what little they had. How they worked together, even in the face of overwhelming odds. She had always been taught that strength was about dominating others, but here in this broken place, strength was something different. It was about unity. It was about connection. They reached a small gathering of people. Jason stopped, his eyes scanning the crowd. A woman approached them, her face worn but kind. She seemed to recognize Jason immediately and gave him a warm, knowing smile. "This is Ava," Jason said. "She's one of the leaders here, one of the ones who keeps everything together." Ava looked at Zara with curiosity, then nodded respectfully. "You're the princess, aren't you?" she asked. Zara stiffened, unsure of how to respond. She had never been treated like this, like she was just another person. "Yes," Zara replied, her voice barely above a whisper. Ava smiled again. "Don't worry. We all need to learn from each other." Zara couldn't understand it. How could someone like Ava, who had so little, be so open, so accepting? How could these people who lived in constant struggle show such kindness? Ava turned to Jason. "You've brought her to see the truth, haven't you? I hope she's ready for it." Zara frowned, confusion swirling in her mind. "The truth?" "The truth about power," Ava said simply. "About what it really means to lead. It's not about who can command the most soldiers or the largest fleets, it's about who can make the hardest choices. The ones who can stand with their people, even when it's hard. The ones who know that leadership is not about control, it's about trust." As the day wore on, Zara witnessed things she had never seen before. She saw families who had lost everything, yet still found a way to help one another. She saw people who had nothing but still gave what they could. And she saw Jason, someone she had once thought of as weak, leading them with the kind of strength that was far more powerful than any army she had ever commanded. By the time they returned to the ship, Zara's mind was in turmoil. The things she had seen, the lessons Jason had taught her, they had changed her. She couldn't deny it any longer. True power didn't come from domination. It came from understanding, from standing beside those who needed you, from trusting that leadership was about serving, not ruling. As the ship soared back into the stars, Zara looked out at the endless expanse of space, her thoughts filled with the weight of what she had learned. She wasn't sure where this path would lead, but one thing was certain: she would never look at power the same way again. The resistance against Zara's new belief. Zara returned to the palace a changed woman, but she kept her transformation hidden beneath layers of royal protocol. The world she had seen, the lessons she had learned, couldn't be so easily forgotten, yet she knew the consequences of showing weakness. She had seen the eyes of the people in the colony, their lives marked by hardship, but also their strength, their unity. And yet, she was not naive enough to think that the galaxy would embrace her newfound understanding of leadership. Power, as her father had always said, could not be built on mere compassion. It had to be earned, and earned through strength. But something had shifted within her. She no longer saw her people as mere subjects. She saw them as beings capable of greatness, if they were given the chance. This was the first time Zara had truly questioned everything she'd been taught about leadership. She had always been told that the power to rule came from instilling fear, but now she saw that fear only created tension, resentment, and weakness. The Royal Council, however, didn't see it that way. As Zara sat at the head of the long, shining table in the Grand Council chamber, she could feel their eyes on her. Every advisor, every general, every politician who had sworn loyalty to her father now seemed to be waiting for the slightest sign of hesitation. They had seen her uncertainty, felt her shift, and they weren't sure how to handle it. Her decision to embrace compassion, to look beyond the typical laws of conquest, was seen as weakness, a dangerous, rebellious idea that could unravel everything the Empire had built. The general who had first brought news of the rebellion in the outer colonies stood before her, his posture rigid and his face like stone. "Your Highness," he began, his voice deep and commanding, "the situation with the rebels grows worse by the day. They are gaining strength, and their message is spreading quickly. They believe in a new kind of leadership, a kind that doesn't come from fear, but from compassion." Zara felt the weight of his words. They were not just about the rebellion anymore. They were about her, about the ideals she had chosen to embrace. Her advisors saw the growing movement as a direct threat to their power. Her father's old methods of control were no longer enough, and they knew it. "If this rebellion continues to grow," the general continued, "they will take the galaxy away from you. They are led by a human, a man who seems to have a way of speaking to the people. He understands their struggles, and they follow him. That is power, Your Highness. Not the soft, naive ideal you wish to build." Zara's heart raced. The general was right in one regard. The movement was gaining traction. She had seen the signs herself. But the idea that she should crush it with force, that the solution was to eliminate the rebels without understanding them, felt wrong to her. Could she really live with herself if she chose violence over compassion? "You speak of power," Zara replied slowly, her voice quiet but firm. "But true power is not about crushing those who oppose you. It is about understanding why they fight. This rebellion is not just about discontent, it's about a need for change, and that is what we must give them. I must give them." The room fell into stunned silence. Her words hung in the air, sharp and defiant. The council members exchanged uneasy glances. Zara could feel their anger rising, but she stood her ground. She had learned too much to retreat now. "Your people do not need compassion, Princess," one of the counselors sneered, his voice dripping with disdain. "They need to be shown who holds the power. You must remind them that you are the ruler of this galaxy, and that no rebellion will be tolerated." "And what if the people don't want to be ruled in fear anymore?" Zara retorted. "What if they want a ruler who understands them, not one who demands their obedience?" The counselor's face twisted in disbelief. You are naive. Your Highness, if you show any sign of weakness, the Empire will crumble. The rebels will not stop. They will spread their message across the galaxy, and soon you will have nothing left to rule over. Zara turned away from the council, her hands gripping the sides of the chair. She had been born to rule, to command. But now her destiny seemed to be slipping through her fingers. If she followed her heart, if she embraced the new way, she risked losing everything her family had fought for. But if she chose the path of domination, she risked becoming the very thing she had once despised. The silence in the room was suffocating. Zara could feel the weight of their expectations bearing down on her. They had lived their lives believing that control through fear was the only way to lead, and they were not about to let go of that belief easily. As Zara stood there, lost in thought, the doors to the chamber burst open, and in walked a figure who was both familiar and unexpected. It was Jason. He had entered the heart of the Empire, the very palace she ruled, and he stood before the council as if it were the most natural thing in the world. The general's eyes widened. "What is this human doing here?" he demanded, stepping forward as if to protect the royal court. Zara turned, surprised but not angry. She had invited Jason here, and she would stand by her decision. "He is here because he has something to say." Jason's calm gaze met hers. "The galaxy is at a tipping point, Princess. Your people are divided, they are lost. And if you continue to rule with fear, they will never trust you. You have a choice to make. You can continue to follow the old ways, or you can embrace the future. But be warned, your people will not follow you if you choose to crush them. They will fight back, and they will not stop until they have what they need." His words hung in the air like a cold wind. Zara looked around the room. The council's eyes burned with anger, their patience wearing thin. They would not accept Jason's message, but the weight of his words, the strength behind them, made something inside her stir. Zara turned back to the council, her voice steady but full of authority. "The rebellion is not just an enemy to destroy. It is a sign that change is coming. The people are demanding it. And if we do not change with them, if we do not listen to their struggles, we will lose everything." The tension in the room exploded. Voices shouted over one another, demanding she change her stance, insisting that she fight fire with fire. The council was split. Some wanted peace, while others craved dominance. Zara was caught in the middle, struggling to hold on to her new beliefs while facing the mounting pressure of tradition and control. "You want to show them compassion?" one of her generals shouted. "Then show them what it means to be the ruler of the galaxy. Teach them that no one challenges us and survives." The words cut through Zara like a blade. She could feel her resolve faltering, but deep inside she knew she had no choice but to make the right decision. "No," she said, her voice a quiet but powerful force. "I will not rule with fear. I will rule with understanding. And if that means the galaxy is turned upside down, then so be it." The room fell silent, the weight of her words settling over them like a storm. Zara had made her choice, and now, the battle for the future of the galaxy had truly begun. A betrayal and the rise of a new power. Zara had never felt so alone. The walls of the palace, once a symbol of her authority, now felt like a prison. She had chosen her path, the path of compassion, of understanding, and yet the consequences of that choice were becoming painfully clear. Her council was divided, her people were uncertain, and the rebellion she had tried to embrace seemed to grow stronger with each passing day. The whispers of discontent in the outer colonies were now reaching her doorstep, and the threat of losing everything was no longer a distant fear. It was a reality she could no longer ignore. As the days passed, Zara could feel the tension in the palace building. Her generals, her most trusted allies, were growing restless. They had fought for years to protect the Empire, and now, in their eyes, she was dismantling it piece by piece. Her refusal to crush the rebellion with force was seen as a weakness, and in their minds that weakness was a threat to everything they had worked for. But it wasn't just the generals who were making her life difficult. Zara's own family was beginning to question her judgment. Her father, the king, had always been her rock, her greatest mentor, but even his patience was wearing thin. He had tried to understand her decision, But as the situation in the galaxy grew more volatile, he began to doubt her ability to lead. It was a conversation with her father that sealed her fate. The king, a man who had ruled with fear and power for decades, called Zara into the throne room, his face dark with frustration. "Zara," he began, his voice heavy with disappointment. "You've chosen a path that will destroy everything we've built. You have to see that. The people do not want a ruler who shows weakness. They want strength. They need to fear you. They need to respect you." "Respect?" Zara asked, her voice barely above a whisper. "Is fear the only way to earn respect? Don't you see? The galaxy is changing. People want more than fear. They want a leader who understands their pain, their struggles." The king's eyes flashed with anger. "You are the princess. Your duty is to lead. Your duty is to command, not to sympathize. You cannot rule with compassion, Zara. It's not enough. I ruled with strength, and I kept this galaxy together. You have to do the same." Zara stood her ground, her heart pounding in her chest. She had always respected her father, but now, for the first time, she felt something deeper, something she had been afraid to confront. She wasn't sure she could follow in his footsteps. The strength he spoke of, the dominance, felt wrong now. She could see the truth in his eyes. He didn't believe in her choices. He didn't believe in her path. "You've always been a ruler of fear, father," Zara said quietly but firmly. "And look where that has gotten us. A galaxy on the brink of rebellion, a people who fear their own leader. This is not the future I want. I want a future where people follow because they trust me, because they know I will fight for them, not against them." The king's face twisted with anger and disappointment. "You're making a grave mistake, Zara, and I won't let you destroy everything we've fought for." With that, he turned away from her, leaving Zara standing in the middle of the grand throne room, her heart heavy with the weight of the decision she had just made. Her father's betrayal, the loss of his support, cut deeper than any blade ever could. But the real betrayal was yet to come. Zara was summoned to a private meeting with her most trusted generals the next day. Her heart was heavy with the knowledge that she had already lost her father's support, but she believed she could still win over the generals. They were the backbone of the empire. If she could sway them, perhaps she could still change the galaxy. But as she walked into the meeting, she immediately sensed that something was wrong. The faces of her generals were colder than usual, their eyes hard and unyielding. "Your Highness," began General Tiran, his voice sharp and calculating. "We've been thinking long and hard about the direction the empire is heading. We understand your desire for peace, for compassion. But there are too many risks involved. The rebels are growing stronger. Your path is leading us into chaos." Zara's heart sank. She had hoped for understanding, for support, but it seemed the generals had already made up their minds. "So, what are you suggesting?" Zara asked, trying to remain composed, though the bitterness in her voice was unmistakable. General Tiran stepped forward, his gaze hard. "We are suggesting that it is time to take action. The rebellion must be crushed. If you will not do it, we will. The galaxy cannot survive without a strong hand to guide it." Zara's eyes widened in disbelief. They had planned this. Her own generals, the ones she had trusted most, had already decided her fate. "You would betray me?" Zara asked, her voice trembling with anger and disbelief. General Tiran's expression was cold. "We are not betraying you, Your Highness. We are doing what is necessary. We are preserving the empire." "By force," Zara spat. "By crushing the people you claim to protect?" The tension in the room was thick, and Zara realized in that moment that her generals no longer saw her as their leader. They saw her as a liability. The betrayal was final. They would stop at nothing to ensure that the old ways of ruling, ways that Zara had rejected, would prevail. The room erupted into chaos. Some of the generals shouted their support for the plan, while others remained silent, unsure of where their loyalties lay. But Zara knew in that moment that she had lost. The rebellion, the people, her father, they were all turning against her. The path she had chosen was too dangerous, too uncertain. She had been naive to think that compassion could change the galaxy. Now she had to make a choice. submit to the old ways or fight for the future she believed in. But as the generals moved toward their exit, one figure stepped forward. Jason. He had been silent during the entire meeting, standing off to the side. But now, as the room settled into an uneasy quiet, he spoke. If you want to change this galaxy, Jason said, his voice steady, you have to be willing to fight for it. Not with weapons, not with fear, but with everything you have. You cannot let them destroy what you've built, Princess. Zara turned to him, her eyes filled with confusion and pain. What are you saying? I've already lost. My own generals want to destroy everything I've worked for. Not everything, Jason said, his gaze unwavering. There are still people who believe in you, who believe in what you stand for. You are not alone, Zara. You never were. It was then that Zara realized the true depth of the battle she faced. It wasn't just a war against the Empire or the rebellion. It was a battle for her very soul. She had to fight for what she believed in, even if it meant losing everything else. Her family, her throne, and everything she had known. But if she didn't fight now, she would be surrendering to a future of fear and domination. You're right, Zara whispered, her voice resolute. I will fight. Not just for the galaxy, but for the future of my people. With Jason by her side, Zara knew that her journey had only just begun. The rebellion was no longer just an external threat. It was now a battle within her own heart, a battle to reclaim the power of understanding, of empathy, and to prove that true strength lay not in domination, but in the courage to change. The stage was set for the ultimate confrontation. Zara had chosen her path, and now she would face the consequences. And in the end, only one question remained. Would the galaxy follow her? Or would it break under the weight of betrayal? The final stand in Zara's new destiny. The air inside the palace felt thick, charged with a palpable tension. Zara stood on the balcony, looking out over the sprawling city below. The once great empire, now divided, stretched before her like a battlefield. The rebellion had grown too large to ignore. Whispers of revolt echoed through the streets, and the forces loyal to her father, the traditionalists, were preparing to crush anyone who dared defy the old ways. Zara had made her choice, but now the question was, could she hold on to her beliefs in the face of everything that was coming for her? The sound of heavy footsteps behind her broke her thoughts. Jason entered the room, his expression unreadable. She could feel the weight of his gaze on her, the same calm presence that had always made her feel like she was on the edge of something huge, something bigger than herself. The army is at the gates, Jason said quietly, his voice cutting through the tension in the room. Your generals are mobilizing. They won't stop until they have you. They won't stop until they take everything you fought for. Zara turned to face him, her heart heavy. They think they can destroy me. They think they can wipe away everything I stand for, everything I believe in. But they don't understand, Jason. They don't understand that this isn't about me, it's about the future of the galaxy. And they're not going to let you have it, he replied, his voice a bit more strained now. They believe in the old ways, fear, dominance, submission. They think they can control everything, but they don't realize the truth. You're fighting for something bigger than power, and that terrifies them. Zara clenched her fists, the weight of her decision pressing down on her. For so long she had lived with the expectation of ruling with strength, ruling with fear. But what she had learned through every conversation with Jason, through every difficult decision, was that true power came from connection, from unity, from understanding. She had learned that power could be shared, not hoarded. It could build, not destroy. And yet the very empire she had inherited seemed intent on tearing her apart for believing in that truth. I can't back down, she whispered to herself, though Jason heard her words clearly. I can't let them win. Not now. He moved closer, his gaze soft but filled with purpose. Then we fight. Not with weapons, but with the strength of our beliefs. We fight for those who can't fight for themselves. We fight for the future. We want to create. Zara nodded, her resolve hardening. It wasn't just about surviving this storm. It wasn't even about winning. It was about showing the galaxy that there was another way. A way that didn't rely on fear and violence. A way that embraced compassion and unity, even in the darkest of times. They left the balcony together, the weight of the decision settling between them. The palace had become a fortress, but it was no longer a place of refuge. It was now the heart of the rebellion, a symbol of what could be lost if Zara failed. As they walked through the corridors, Zara could hear the sounds of the palace coming alive, guards preparing for battle, advisors rushing to make plans, generals barking orders. Every step she took felt like the countdown to something monumental. But even with all the tension building, even with everything at stake, Zara felt a strange peace within her. She wasn't just fighting for herself anymore. She was fighting for everyone who believed in her vision, for the millions of voices that had never been heard, for the people who were just as tired of fear and bloodshed as she was. When they reached the war room, the doors were flung open. The generals were already gathered around the large table, discussing strategies. Their eyes flickered toward Zara, the princess who had dared to defy them. Some wore expressions of contempt, while others looked like they had resigned themselves to their duty. But none of them looked at her with respect. None of them understood the stakes of the fight they were preparing for. "Your Highness," General Tyrion said, his voice dripping with disdain. "We've waited long enough. The time for talk is over. You will join us, or you will stand in our way." Zara stepped forward, her gaze hardening. "I will not join you. I will never fight. For fear. I won't be a ruler who stands above her people. I will fight with them. I will fight for them." A murmur of disbelief rippled through the room. The generals exchanged glances, their hands tightening around their weapons. Zara knew they were all waiting for her to crumble, for her to back down. But she wouldn't. This wasn't just about being right. It was about something far deeper than any throne or empire. "You've made your choice," General Tyrion said, drawing his weapon slowly. "And so have we." In an instant, the tension broke. The room erupted into chaos. Zara's heart raced, and for the first time in her life, she felt the true weight of leadership. This wasn't about war strategies or military power. This was about standing firm in what she believed, no matter the cost. Jason stepped forward, positioning himself between Zara and the generals. His calmness stood in stark contrast to the rising storm of conflict around them. "If you want to fight us," Jason said, his voice cold and steady, "you'll have to fight for something that truly matters. Because we're not just fighting for the throne or the crown or some old empire. We're fighting for the future, and we won't back down." For a moment, no one moved. Then slowly, one by one, the generals backed away, their faces etched with frustration. They knew that the battle they were about to fight wasn't just about winning or losing. It was about something deeper, something they didn't fully understand. "You're all dismissed," Zara said, her voice unwavering. "This war is not for you to win. It's for the galaxy to decide." The generals left, their footsteps echoing through the war room, and Zara stood there, her heart beating loudly in her chest. She had just faced down the very people who had once pledged to protect her. They had betrayed her, just as her father had, just as the Empire had. But Zara wasn't afraid. Not anymore. As the doors closed behind them, Jason turned to Zara, his eyes filled with pride. "You did it," he said quietly. "You made the right choice." Zara looked out at the vast expanse of space through the war room's windows. The stars seemed endless, just as her journey felt. But she was ready. She had faced her greatest challenge yet, and she had stood firm. "This is just the beginning," Zara said, her voice filled with determination. "The galaxy may not understand us now, but they will. I will make them see the future we can have. And no matter what happens, next I will stand with the people who believe in change." The final stand had just begun, but Zara had already won the battle within herself. No matter the outcome, she knew her destiny was no longer about ruling with fear. It was about leading with heart. The rebellion was coming. But now, for the first time, Zara knew she was ready. not just to survive, but to change the galaxy forever. The new era of the galaxy and Zara's true power. The days that followed the confrontation with her generals were a blur of unrest and uncertainty. Zara had made her stand, had chosen a future for the galaxy that was filled with hope, not fear. But the path ahead was far from clear. As she stood on the balcony of the palace once more, she looked out over a galaxy on the edge of chaos. The empire she had inherited was crumbling, its foundations built on fear and oppression, and the people were rising to demand something different. The rebellion had spread across the stars, and the loyalty of her generals had shattered like glass, each of them now aligning with either her or the old guard. But even as the empire fractured, a new hope began to grow. The citizens of the galaxy, once cowered beneath the weight of royal control, were starting to see Zara not as a ruler above them, but as one of them. And with that hope came a dangerous question. Could Zara actually lead them? Could she truly transform the galaxy into what she envisioned? The room behind her was filled with advisors and leaders from across the galaxy, each one vying for attention, each one asking for a piece of the power she was trying to create. The tension in the air was thick as everyone knew the stakes. Some had come to support her vision of compassion and unity, while others were still loyal to the old ways, strength through fear, power through domination. But Zara knew that these were not the people she needed to convince. It was the people of the galaxy, the ones in the outer colonies, the ones struggling in the darkness of oppression, who were waiting for her to show them the way forward. They had chosen to follow her not because of her bloodline or her status, but because they believed in her vision for a better future. Her thoughts were interrupted by the soft sound of footsteps. She turned, her heart heavy with the knowledge of what was to come. Jason entered the room, his expression unreadable as always. But there was something different in the way he carried himself now, something more resolute, as if he had been touched by the same realization that Zara had. "They're gathering," Jason said, his voice steady but filled with concern. "The forces loyal to your father, the ones who believe in the old ways. They'll come for you soon, Zara. They won't let you reshape this galaxy without a fight." Zara nodded, her fingers clenching around the railing. "I know. And I'm ready for them. But it's not just the forces loyal to my father we need to worry about now. The entire galaxy is watching. The people are ready for change. But will they believe in me? Will they trust that I can lead them through this?" Jason stepped closer, his eyes softening with understanding. "The trust of the people is something you can earn, Zara. But it's not just about them believing in you. It's about you believing in yourself. The power you've been seeking all along has been inside you this whole time. The compassion, the understanding, the strength to do what others can't. That's what the galaxy needs. Not a ruler who holds them in fear, but a leader who stands with them." Zara looked out at the stars, a burning determination filling her chest. She had been trained to be a ruler, to be the strongest, the most feared. But now, after everything she had seen, the suffering, the pain, the hope, she knew that what the galaxy needed wasn't a queen who ruled from above. It needed a leader who fought beside them, a leader who understood them, who was willing to sacrifice everything to change the course of the galaxy. She turned back to Jason, her heart full. "You're right. It's time for me to lead with my heart. The galaxy needs more than just a queen. It needs a symbol of hope. And I will be that symbol. I will show them that true power comes not from dominance, but from unity." Jason smiled, a rare knowing smile that reached his eyes. "Then let's show them." Together, they walked from the palace, leaving behind the safety of the old world and stepping into the unknown. The city around them was alive with whispers, with uncertainty. The rebellion was reaching its climax. The forces loyal to Zara's father were gathering in the distance, but so were the millions of civilians, farmers, workers, and soldiers who had joined her cause. They had chosen her not because of her title, but because they saw in her a chance for a different future. A future where they were no longer pawns in the game of power, but active participants in the world they were creating. As Zara stood before the vast crowds, she felt a chill run down her spine. This was it, the moment she had been waiting for. Her future as the ruler of 1,000 worlds was now on the line. And she knew, without a doubt, that this moment was not just about survival. It was about shaping the galaxy in a way that no one had ever dared before. The silence was deafening as she stepped onto the podium. The eyes of the galaxy were upon her, waiting for her to speak, waiting for her to make the first move. She could feel their hopes, their fears, their expectations. It was no longer about her birthright. It was about their belief in a new world. Zara took a deep breath and spoke. "My people," she began, her voice rising in the silence. "For too long, we have been divided. For too long, we have lived in fear. But today we stand together. We are not bound by bloodlines or titles, but by our shared desire for a better future. A future where we no longer rule over each other, but with each other." Her words echoed through the crowd, the power in them undeniable. The tension in the air seemed to crackle as she continued. "We will no longer be ruled by fear. We will no longer be ruled by those who think power is only earned through domination. We will stand united as one people, and we will create the galaxy that we deserve. A galaxy where kindness is strength, and unity is our weapon." The crowd erupted. For the first time, Zara felt the full weight of her decision. She was no longer just a princess. She was a leader, a symbol of change. And the galaxy, her galaxy, was ready to follow her. As the cheers of the crowd filled the air, Zara felt a strange calm wash over her. The fight was far from over, but in this moment, she knew she had already won. Not just the loyalty of the people, but their trust. The galaxy had seen the truth in her words, in her actions. They believed in her, and together they would fight for the future. As the days passed, the final battle approached. The forces loyal to her father were now facing a galaxy united under Zara's banner. The rebellion, once a small spark in the darkness, had become an unstoppable force. Zara's leadership had sparked something more than just a fight. It had sparked a revolution. The final confrontation was brutal. Ships collided in space, armies clashed on the ground, and the fate of the galaxy hung in the balance. But through it all, Zara remained steadfast. She fought not just for victory, but for a new way of living, a new way of being. With Jason by her side, with the trust of her people, she knew they could not fail. As the dust settled and the last of the old regime fell, Zara stood victorious. The galaxy was hers, not through fear, but through unity. Through compassion, she had rebuilt the empire, not with power, but with heart. And in the silence that followed the chaos of battle, Zara looked out at the stars. For the first time, they no longer felt distant. They felt like home. Zara's reign had begun, not as a queen who ruled with an iron fist, but as a leader who ruled with love. And the galaxy, united under her banner, was ready to begin a new era. An era of peace, hope, and true power.